Yeah, I just finished teaching a class at Seattle Pacific University called Leading a Whole and Intentional Life. And it's the first time in about 8 years I've been allowed to teach an undergraduate class. And I'm pretty inspired by what I saw there because the whole class, it's an intensive that goes over 3 days, but there's a ton of pre-work. So a lot of work that went in as these students came into those 3 days. And it sounds long, but it goes pretty fast. And what I was most inspired by is we were having conversations and providing them a structure and a process and tools to help them think about the call and purpose on their lives, to have them think about their motivations, the experiences that they've had, the experiences they want next, their skill sets and competencies, the network of support that they could build around them. They started to build that network, and also how they could invest in the development of other people, and also how their strengths and areas for development under pressure. So we go through this whole thing, and I was amazed by how much these students changed and took responsibility for themselves in those 3 days. Let me read you a couple of things that they said after the class. They said, if other people went through this kind of a process, they said this: people's self-value would change and they would be able to see themselves as a work in progress. That's amazing. It would challenge people on this campus. This needs to happen. There is no growth and stagnation. This class allowed people to prompt themselves to grow and to make themselves more whole. People are already exploring this in college, and a process is needed. Somebody else said this process would make things less triangular. More people would be able to speak for themselves and not blame others. There would be more awareness as to how they can show up better above and beyond the classroom. And finally, it said people who normally don't step up for leadership roles would step up. I was just so inspired by this group. Some of these folks took the class because they thought it was going to be a 3-day intensive and they could get some credits out of the way. They didn't know how much work it was going to be beforehand. And every person, to a person across all kinds of different majors, and from freshmen to sophomore to juniors to seniors, dove right in. And when they were provided that structure, it was awesome. And so I mentioned this because if you're a manager, I think the same things apply. That if we invest in building people's agency and their own developmental efficacy by avoiding the temptation to tell people what they should be. So if I tell you to be vulnerable, no one wants to be told what to do. It'd be like a comedian saying, "Hey, I'm going to tell you a funny story," and now when they tell the story, it's not funny. They just tell you the story. So instead of telling people to be more vulnerable or telling people what we think they ought to do, is to open up questions where they open their own answer. Sure, we have convictions about what we hope for them, what we hope for ourselves from them, but if we can open up agency, it opens up a very different kind of conversation. And these guys just inspired me. So that's the big thing, is like maybe if we ask questions differently and we gave people responsibility for themselves, it would look different.